and she speaks about race-related issues between black and white. We're going to touch up on a few things about like the wealth gap. You're going to say, how black people, she's going to show a list of like Black Wall Street, the other black towns, that was making money and prospering before it got destroyed. Then she's going to speak on crimes and all this other stuff. So she's pretty much is defending black people.
All right, we're really going to do this right now? This really the hill you want to die on? Since we're on the topic of equal opportunity, let's talk about the racial wealth gap, i.e. why black Americans own 12 cents worth of equity and wealth in this country for every white dollar. Now, I can't really blame you for not knowing this because that's absolutely by design. But if you're truly not a shithead person, you'll stop and listen. We're going to talk about the open destruction of black wealth. Now, this is the beginning of a long list of prospering black communities that were murdered, burned to the ground, bombed, or turned into lakes. Up near the top, you'll see the Slocum Massacre, which happened about 10 miles from where my parents are living. Now, would you believe that most people in this town have never heard of it, even though it happened right down the road? And all the prosecuting that was done by the Anderson County judge. In essence, white men went into a prospering black community where there was a lot of black ownership, a few miles down the road from Palestine, Texas, and they murdered up to 100 to 200 people. They shot them in the backs while they were fleeing. They came into their homes day and night. They killed children, and they dumped the bodies in a creek behind the town. Now, the men that did this would face no consequences, as many of the white people involved in these did not. So, regardless of if your ancestors were Irish or Italian or whatever, they had the opportunity to build wealth that black people did not. So even if we're not talking about the direct case of a lawmaker suggesting that they bring back hanging by trees in a predominantly black area, in an area with 236 racial terror lynchings in less than 100 years, we can see how many black businesses, i.e. black wealth, was completely demolished. Over $100 million worth in one case. And y'all continually say legal discrimination no longer exists, educational opportunities have expanded significantly, and we've elected a black president and vice president. So absent any barriers, our economic success largely depends on how hard we work and the financial, educational, and other choices we make. The good choices lead to success, bad choices lead to less. And feel free to read this, but it says the ultimate implication of this kind of argument is that there's something inferior about the group that has worse outcomes. Meanwhile, white people were included in all wealth-building policies, such as the 1862 Homestead Act, which granted 160 acres of land west of the Mississippi River to families willing to work it, the GI Bill, and robust 20th century policies to promote homeownership. Black Americans, though, were largely excluded from these policies. Then, of course, we go back to all the racial violence and the destruction of black-owned property and black wealth. This is why we need critical race theory. The fact that you guys don't know this is abhorrent. There is no such thing as equal opportunity in this country, especially when white people are more likely to have parents that they can lean on who have wealth to share. It's not quite that simple. Capitalism by itself could not thrive without the combination of classism and racism. Classism by itself, without racism, would fail. Because without the division of racism, there would be too much combined power in the working class. See, when you divide the working class up by race, they lose their cumulative power. Then, when you further polarize them between two political parties, you ensure that no matter what, their voting power is going to be meaningless. But the whole idea, and this has been stated historically, is that if you can convince white people that there's a group of people, i.e. black people, lesser than them, then they won't notice why you pick their pockets. There will now be a scapegoat to blame everything on. And when you really think about it, crime is blamed on black people. Welfare is blamed on black people. Unemployment, blamed on black people. Even though white people consume more drugs per capita, white people commit the most white-collar crimes, i.e. embezzling, fraud. And if I had the time to pull up the stats, I would, but I've mentioned it in previous videos. You can go and find it if you feel like it. The point is, this society does not function the way that it does as a masked oligarchy without both classism and racism, in which poor white people are positioned against poor black people, in which poor white people give a voting base for the people that will continue to uphold these racist, oppressive legislation. And I want you to really pay attention to how they're trying to bring back Jim Crow in southern states. They capitalize on the ignorance of poor white people who think all poor people have the same opportunity, which allows them to strip Black people of their humanity, which allows them to overlook the systemic racism happening, and allows them to excuse their positioning of these people that write and enforce these oppressive policies. The sooner that white people acknowledge the role that racism plays in our current capitalist system, in the masked oligarchy that we have in this country, the faster we can move towards real democracy, where people are not simply disillusioned to the idea that they have say-so or power, while 70% of our resources are hoarded by a few individuals. Think about that.